Okay, welcome to the Noble Shire of Progressive Discussion. Today, what a wonderful surprise. I've never met these guys. I've listened to their music for years, but they were nice enough to send me their brand new album, Echolyn. Yeah, by the way, let's mention the name of the band. But we do have Echolyn assembled here to talk about their two albums. Most bands are happy enough just to get one out. These guys put together two. Silent Time Radio 2 and Silent Time Radio, I'm hoping it's 7. And I think it's because of the amount of songs on each album. But these guys are releasing both of them on the 7th of March. And as they say, they've been together for over 36 years and they're just getting started, still just getting started. So I'm going to go around the room and let you guys introduce yourselves and tell us what you do within the band.
I guess I'll start. My name is Ray. I play the bass and lead and background vocals. I like long walks on the beach and a cold beer.
Hey, good. Yeah, I'm glad you did that. Thank you, because I was going to ask you some of those things anyway. Go.
I'm Chris
Chris?
Buzz. Yeah, I'm the keyboard player and I do backing vocals and I am a music teacher. So go
Oh,
teacher. Yep. I teach 6th through 12th grade music, band, chorus, general music, and it eats up a lot of my life, but it's something I love and enjoy. But being a part of this band feeds all that because it's a great combination of teaching and then doing and then doing and then teaching, making art.
My name is Brett Cull. My favorite color is green, and I'm wearing my pajamas.
I'm
I was
wearing your
afraid.
pajamas too, Brett.
I was afraid he's going to say he's a scorpion or something like that. Okay.
Go
And
ahead, Glenn.
I'm not a member of the band. As a matter of fact, I just happened to be walking by this Zoom call, and Ray collared me and dragged me in from a different Zoom call. But all kidding aside, of course, my name's Glenn Rosenstein. I'm a record producer. I produced As the World, and 30 years later, somehow or other, had the privilege of mixing and mastering the new record. So, yeah, been a record producer for a very, very long period of time. Some of the artists that you had mentioned, Mark, in our pre-conversation are artists that I have done records for in the past. And
Oh,
yeah, and
why
and
don't why don't you mention some of those? Yeah, go ahead.
where I worked on The River, Bruce Springsteen,
Oh, good.
on albums from Madonna, U2, Talking Heads, Tears for Fears, Ziggy Marley, a
Oh my
whole
God.
host of a plethora, if you will, of well known and not so well known bands. But the best thing about all of this is that I get to work with Echolyn.
Wow. That that says a lot, really. And um, within my review, I hope I probably over glorified, but mentioned how great they are in terms of U.S. progressive rock. And I think you back me up on that. They're probably those two voices are just incredible, and I don't know anyone else in traditional progressive rock. I mean, you've got LeBron, you've got people like that that are in a different realm, I think. But the combination of these two guys is awesome. What do you think, Glenn? Yeah,
Oh, are you asking me? I,
yeah,
I would I would suggest to you that you and I are the two biggest fanboys on this call
yeah,
line.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and no,
fair.
I mean that sincerely. I've had, as you would imagine, I have commensurate experience in making records, as does, the band. And I know it took us 30 years to get around to working together again, but what an awesome way to celebrate. It was a great opportunity for me personally and professionally, and love these guys immensely, no joke. And I think hopefully the small role that I had in the making of this record reflects some of the enjoyment that we had in the process itself.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah. No, you can feel joy throughout this whole thing.
Very much so.
Both albums, definitely.
I think we're the Mark. I think we're the rare rock band or progressive band or whatever that has two singers, and three of us can sing. Um, it's kind of like how many of those bands can we name? That are out there that have two singers.
The dueling leads. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Supertramp,
No,
The Who,
Yep.
maybe. But yeah, it's kind of cool.
yeah, and you work together. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, well, I can think of a few, but a lot of them aren't still making music. So that's the other important thing.
I feel very lucky I can work with Ray that way. It's just so easy to we can sing harmony together and we can try to sound like each other and different. It's nice. I've worked with so many other people, but it's he and I. It's just so easy that we can do things like that. I feel very lucky to have found somebody like that that I can work with
We
that way.
got just to have just about 40 years together
Yeah.
this year.
Yep. Yeah.
So we are one voice.
While you were talking, I thought of a couple of those bands. Crosby, Stills is probably the biggest as far as harmonies. But then guess what's coming out this year? And I know I'm going off the road already. The Doobie Brothers, and
Oh,
that's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that.
Yep. There's another one. Yeah. Good point.
Mark,
Uh,
one I'll toss in, and this is a compliment to my bandmates. I love being able to know that they each trust and have a rapport with each other musically.
yeah,
That because of the distance of making this new album, a lot of times I wasn't able to be in the room to provide insight, feedback, ideas, simply because I'm 3 hours away from them in Southern Delaware. It was always so rewarding to get demo versions of songs that I also had to then get used to what was now there that wasn't there prior. And I trust and know that these two trust and know each other enough that it's like a point and a counterpoint, or a balance and a counterbalance, that they work together to make the song come first. And between the lyrical material, between the melodies, between the harmonies, it's just always so fun as a fellow composer to hear those added layers, and to also know that they understand how their voices blend and work together so well. But then there's also times their voices push against each other so well.
yeah,
And that just, I think, enhances our collective songwriting, because it gives us a sound that is Echolyn. A lot of people say, well, you don't sound like anyone. And I often say, thanks. Like, that's not our goal. we want to
yeah.
sound like ourselves. So we have our own voice, but we also have voices that are unique to our own individual sound. I think that's a compliment to us as a band, and also to the music we get to write together, because it's fun and enjoyable, but it's also, again, truly progressive. We're always moving from where we've been.
That's a great point, Chris. I remember there was a moment when we were working on Water in Our Hands, and I remember I shot you a message, and Chris is good 2.5 hours south of where Ray and I are, so we weren't together. And I was working on a part, and I was like, Chris, can you come up? We need a transition from here to here. And within a couple hours, he's in his classroom banging on something, sending me a videotape, and then sends me the audio, and I sync it up in the song, and it was perfect. We know each other so well, and we trust each other. It's like very intuitive. It just works very, very, very easily. It's lucky that not only on a vocal level, but a musical level, friendship, it's just all there. It's perfect.
Yep.
Now, one other thing I wanted to, I know not everyone can always make these things. So, do you want to talk about the absent friends, the people that aren't here? Because I know they played a very important role. And I know you guys want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah.
Jordan specifically. I mean, Jordan has been someone we've known for a long time.
Yeah.
He was a student of mine. I met him in 8th grade at the school I used to teach in Pennsylvania. He came up all the way through high school. And in the year 2000, we were starting to work on Cowboy Poems Free. And Paul, our former drummer, just didn't think he could be part of it. He didn't have the time commitment. I asked Jordan, would you want to ride over to the studio, meet the guys? He was already a fan of Echolyn's music. He sat in and started learning some of those songs and actually played on 3 of them. And ironically enough, I think it piqued Paul's interest. Like, who's this young guy who's going to start playing drums in the band I used to be in? So Paul rejoined for that album, but we never lost track of Jordan. And Jordan is just an amazing, very incredibly worldly, great pocket player. I mean, you can hear it on the album. I mean, the guy can do anything, but he also adds to the mix. He adds dynamics, he adds feel, he adds pocket, he adds groove. He knows when to play, he knows when not to play. And all those things matter, because when you're writing music like ours, you know, especially the longer pieces, they're almost like little mini symphonies. You know, they're little symphonic movements.
Yes,
you have to have a drummer who gets the concept of when I'm overplaying, when I'm underplaying, when I'm supposed to play, when I'm not. So props to Jordan for now being a part of us. He's part of the quartet of Echolyn. And the album speaks for itself. For those who have heard it, I'm sure they get it. For those who haven't heard it yet, because it's coming out on March 7th, they will get to hear the musical magic he adds to the mixes of these albums.
And trust me, it's addictive. You won't be able to take this thing off. I can't. I mean, yesterday I went on this long trip and I was lucky enough to just be able to sit in the car, which I hadn't listened to it in the car yet, but it's wonderful in the car, by the way. You're gonna love it. But
Awesome.
but yeah, to be able to just, concentrate on the music while you're driving, yeah, this you're not gonna be able to take it off your record player. One other person was Katie, because she does the punchline on the shorter songs album. And does anyone want to mention her?
Yeah, she's Katie Barbado is my wife,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, and she's an amazing singer-songwriter herself. And I've worked with her on at least 3 records, and we're working on a new one now together, the two of us. And yeah, I'm always actually all of us, Ray, Chris, and I are always big fans of adding extra color where it can happen, whether it's strings or woodwinds or brass or percussion. And because of obviously her availability here, it's like if I'm thinking like, oh, it would be really cool if you could just add something here, a little bit of color to get a little bit of that energy and frequency in there and vibe, it would help. And she would do it. It's just enough that adds some variance to things, and I think it really helped a lot. I hope you feel the same way.
Definitely. Oh God, yeah. Yeah, no. Well, no, I won't even go there. All right. How did you guys meet? Because again, I don't know you that well. I don't know how many people out there that are listening to this know you that well. But how did all you guys get together? Because thank God you did, because you make unbelievable music. But I mean, that's always one of those things. Is it serendipity? Is it just yeah, go ahead.
In 1985, I was working for an armored car company in Pennsylvania, and Brett's father was one of the major salesmen for the company. And I came in one Friday afternoon to pick up my paycheck, and I had a leather jacket on that had pins on it. And he said, "Oh, I see a guitar pin on your coat. Do you play guitar?" I play bass. He's like, "Oh, great. My son's band needs a bass player." And
Oh,
at the time I had, like, "Oh, yeah, your little son's band needs a bass player." Right. And it probably went on for a couple of weeks. He kept asking me to come over. So one night I finally did. And when I walked in, I think they were playing Starship Trooper,
oh, wow.
and it was like spot on. They were a cover band at the time. The band's name was Narcissus. And I was like, "Oh, Christ, that's above my pay grade. I can't play that well."
Yeah,
And they asked me, "What songs do I know?" Like, I could play. I was into Chicago at the time. I was like, "I could play I'm a Man." Like, "Oh yeah, we know that one."
it's a great
And
song.
we played it. And like I said earlier, it's now 40 years later. And other than when the band first broke up, or Narcissus broke up in '88. We've been together ever since.
I was a big Terry Kath fan, so when Ray said he knew that, I'm like, this is going to be good. I like this guy. And still a big Terry Kath fan, but yeah, Ray came right in and played it, and it was perfect. We immediately fit right in. It was great. Ray, continue on from there.
Um, Geez, really? Well, we've been together ever since. There's, uh, not much more to say about that, really.
Yeah.
Well, the piggyback would be how I ended up with you guys, because it was Brett's father as well, who happened to be in the mall with Brett's younger brother, Tim, who I used to go to school with. My family parents' home is half a mile around the corner, literally around the corner from where Brett's parents' home and Brett's
Isn't that
studio.
amazing? Yeah.
And so, long story short, is I'm working in the mall selling clothing in American Eagle. Tim walks up to me. Aren't you Chris Busby? Yes, I am. Aren't you Tim Cole? Yes, I am. His dad comes over. Oh, what's Chris's background? Tim's like, well, I remember you used to play piano in fifth grade. This, of course, is now many years later, high school into college. I was a freshman in college. And he says, yeah, my brother needs a keyboard player. And my first thought was, well, I don't really want to join a band right now. I'm going to school for composition and theory. That's more where my head's at. He's like, yeah, I don't think he wants to do covers anymore. That's what they used to do. He's looking to do all original music. Well, that piqued my interest.
That
Basically,
first
took
few years up.
interview, kind of audition, eventually returned Brett's call, went to the studio. We had the similar thing where we jokingly talked about what bands do you know? When he mentioned Yes, I said, I know Owner of a Lonely Heart. When he mentioned Genesis, I only knew Invisible Touch. So I was clueless to the early years of those groups because of my age. And I was the oldest of three boys. I was raised on 80s rock radio, New Wave, Howard Jones, that kind of thing, Devo, AC/DC. So when we started writing songs together, it just clicked. And here we are 30 plus years later, still doing this because we have that love for let's go to the uncommon place we've never been and write truly progressive, truly original music, which, as I said before, it's us. It's Echolyn.
And plus, Chris, Chris is only 4 years younger than myself, and he's the eldest in his family, like I am too. But Chris didn't have that, that older uncle like I had that was like, hey, check out this tune. Check out, you ever hear this comedy album called Up in Smoke? Check this out, 13-year-old Brett. And I'm like, what is this? So Chris never had that. My uncle was turning me on to, Zeppelin and Yes, the Cars, all the Ramones, all that stuff. And Chris never had it. So he's right. When we got together and we were talking about things, Chris was like, yeah, but have you heard of Motley Crue? And I was like, dude, we need to talk. If we're going to talk. But we still joke about it. We love it. It's great.
Yeah. And you guys in many ways became the older brother I never had because I was the oldest brother.
Yeah.
So it was great. They were constantly turning me on to things that if I had had that older brother, I would have already known. I remember you guys sharing Supertramp and Gentle Giant and groups like that with me. And I'm like, who are these people? They're like, these people have had albums out for years. I just never had exposure to it. So yeah, it was an experience.
And you guys are all pointing out something that the younger people that are listening are like, well, can't these guys go on the internet and find this stuff? No, that didn't exist back then. You found out from people sharing, because they cared that much about, like you guys have been saying. Going
to a record store was a pilgrimage. You wouldn't just go in and buy something. You would go and hang out at the record store and hopefully see a friend or meet somebody or have somebody that's selling things just come over to you and like, hey, so what are you into? And it happened. That was the normal way that you would learn music. And a lot of times you would buy something. The first Yes album I bought was Relayer. I had heard Yes on the radio and I was like, I got to get this. I like some of their tunes. And I just, the guy that's selling this stuff was like, check out this thing. Look at the cover. And I was like, wow, it's a great cover. I took it home and I'm like, what is this? This doesn't sound like anything from this band that I like that's on the radio. But my point is that I had invested, $8 or $9 in that. And I was like, you know what? This is my hard-earned money. I rode my bike down to the store. I'm going to take some time and get into this record. And it took me a long time to get into it, but it's a great album. And then you circle back and you go into other things. So you have that investment process. It's not the same now, obviously, because we've just got millions of free songs playing all around us all the time. There's no
Yeah.
investment.
All right, I'm going to tell you a short story about me and IQ. I had no idea who they were, and walked into a record store one day, was fumbling through, or going through the albums, came up to their album and saw the picture of Peter, and it looked like Peter Gabriel. I mean, he had the face paint and all that stuff. I said, well, I got to try this. And I just tried it. I mean, you did that back then because you didn't have the internet. There was no way I could have found English music other than to just buy the thing. And like you said, it was an investment. Maybe is a dangerous investment, but especially when you're a high school kid and you only have maybe $20 to your name that week. But now I have the entire catalog. So it led to something that just was incredible. So yeah, you did that back then, and I absolutely, like you guys, miss it. And we actually, there's a few there's used record stores here in Washington and in Bellingham, but I'll go up to Canada and they actually, believe it or not, still have record stores in the mall, which you guys probably do in Philly and that area. I know back east. No, really?
I
Back
don't
east.
I don't mean to interrupt. There's a
Yeah, go
noise
ahead.
coming from my basement that I'm very concerned about. My sump pump is frozen and I hear water running down there. I
Oh,
apologize. I'll be right back.
Oh
mute,
no, that's
mute,
okay.
Ray, mute.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you guys, they are having some wicked weather back there. Ours is cold, but it's nothing like, we're talking 40s and 50s and maybe 30s at night. You guys are what, 5 degrees
Yeah,
or
we're
negative?
finally warming up now.
Oh,
My
good, good.
question, I don't know of many record stores in this area. I worked at the Wall. There was a Sam Goody chain, Tower Records. They're all
Yeah,
done at this point
it's a
because music
shame.
moved online or people are buying physical copy through like Amazon or Target, big
Did
sort of department store chains or online retailers.
did you guys ever have a Peaches? Did Peaches ever make it out there?
Not on the East Coast. I've heard of
Okay.
it, but
Because
yeah,
they used to have the crates and all that stuff. And oh my God, you'd walk in the door, well, they had one here in the University District of Seattle, and you'd come down the street and you'd see those outside what's the word I'm looking for? They paint the walls. There's a
oh,
word, not graffiti, but anyway, with the album covers and stuff like that, and murals, yeah. And thank you. It was Glenn, I think. Thank you.
That's my
Uh,
job.
but I miss all that. Yeah, absolutely. And the day that thing closed was just, it was sad. But
yeah,
It's a sad state of affairs indeed, but there's also a component of discovery that is very, very much what we're doing right this moment.
you're
And when
right.
you think about, how the connectivity that permits records like Echolyn's records to be made
Yeah.
through COVID, through whatever challenges there were. I'm in Nashville, and we have a home here in Nashville and also out on the West Coast. Um, but the way that we were able to take advantage of some of the better aspects of the
Yeah.
technology change and all of that really led, to to this project being as ambitious and fulfilling that project as possible. I hear everything. I'm probably the oldest one on this call, and I certainly miss the culture,
Yeah.
and the curation components of going to a great record store. I could watch the film High Fidelity
Yeah.
another 200 times, and and get all weepy over it. But there is a real amazing reality that we're experiencing right this moment.
That's true.
In interacting with you, Mark, and it really spoke to the way that these two new records were made. And maybe Chris and Ray and Brett might want to talk about that a little bit as well. Just how it took a while, but and I won't fill in all the blanks, but it took a while, and ultimately there was a huge online component to the way that we were able to work together, to the way that they were able to work together as well.
Yeah, not only was this process, the process of writing distant, but as Glenn is alluding to, the process of mixing this album was also in a distance format. And we made that happen through something that Glenn introduced me to, and obviously the rest of the band, which was an application called Session Wire. And we did that. And I could, in a sense, sit here in my room but in a cyber kind of way, I'd be sitting next to Glenn as he's working on the Pro Tools session that I started. And I could visually see the Pro Tools session. I could see Glenn. We conversed. I could hear back at a quality and fidelity level that was good enough and very good that I could trust what he was doing and knew that I was getting back a representation of what he was hearing. So that's a new thing, and it's not something to be glossed over. It's pretty cool that we were able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. There are a lot of positives that
Yeah.
we do sometimes overlook.
I'm
Yes.
I'm with you completely, Mark, on the cultural aspects of it, without a doubt.
Yeah.
How can you not miss the camaraderie that was very much an in-person experience? I didn't grow up with Brett and Ray and Chris, but I could very, very much see in our conversations as we worked together that had we been in the same neighborhood, we certainly would have hung together, and we certainly would have hung at Tower, or we would have hung at one of the mom and pop shops. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and there was this record store called Zigzag,
Oh
and
yeah, I've
they
heard of it.
sold, yeah, they sold records and all kinds of paraphernalia. So of course it was the place that we spent the most time.
Yeah.
And that my daughter takes an interest in music, and I wish that could be something that I could culturally share with her. But then, the thing that's replaced it does maybe not as compelling a job of that kind of camaraderie, but it does give you that worldwide access where suddenly your next door neighbor could be in Bellington or could be in Vancouver, or how we made this record, or my part of the record, I could be in Nashville in my studio here, while Brett and Ray and Chris were either giving approval, giving suggestions. That thing was very evident in what we did, and it was real fun way to make a
Let me
record.
let me ask all of you, and definitely Glenn, uh, as record execs, did you ever envision that a bunch of people would, like me, high school kids would get together, maybe buy Led Zeppelin 3, and then for instance, I'd buy Led Zeppelin 3, Brett would buy, Foxtrot, and we'd get together because this is what we used to do as high school kids, and we'd each put those albums on and we'd listen to them. Everyone would shut up, there'd be no conversation. You'd listen to the whole thing, and then we'd talk about it. I liked that song, I didn't like that, and this is why. And I'm telling you, that's how I found out about some of the bands. I mean, I once I got into it, once I heard, the Peter Gabriel era, was gung ho on progressive. Looked for everything and listened to everything.
And there's
But at the
both.
same time, a lot of people did bring stuff to me that I had never heard, and just that, like
You're
you said,
actually
camaraderie.
serving.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry,
I'm sorry, Mark. I didn't mean to interrupt, but you're actually serving that function, aren't you? Because
try
here we are talking about this new Echolyn record, which we all, have a vested interest in creatively, and you're feeling compelled enough to want to do exactly what you were doing in junior high school and in high
Yeah.
school, and you've got now the forum to be able to do it. Again, I don't think one is a direct replacement for the other because I cherish the same moments, Mark, that you do. But my participation in the music business and continued participation absolutely feeds what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the ability to be able to have a seat at the table with bands like Echolyn or whoever else, we get to work with is, it's almost like paying an honorarium to that moment in time because it was the thing that inspired us. And Brett has a different story, but a similar ending because here's where we're sitting. Same with Ray, same with Chris, and in fact, same with you, Mark, right? I mean, here we are. Here
Mhm.
we are doing it. And we're paying honor to a passion that lives inside of the five of us that we get to articulate maybe in slightly different ways, but nonetheless, we do get to articulate that. So I see that in people who are playlisters, who are trying to turn people on to new music. My daughter is, again, she's 16 years of age, very interested in music, but she gets those references instead of going to the music store. She gets those references from trusted playlisters, curators, people
Yeah.
like yourself. And that's where a lot of that discovery seems to come from these days. To me, it's a very, very interesting look. Culture is always going to shift. And to me, it's an interesting shift in the culture because it's not totally undesirable. At least
Yeah.
there's some mechanism in place where we can discover music. You know, I spend a lot of time in my vehicle and I have Sirius XM and I am like constantly flipping and flipping and flipping because I want to hear the new thing. I want to hear something that could, appeal to me. And the fact that it's less regional and now more international, it's a great way of sourcing stuff. I don't mean to go on about it, but it's kind of replaced that import store.
Yeah.
Remember the record store that like a buddy of mine ran a label called Gem Records and they imported like all the Brand X stuff and all of that kind of stuff. And now that's coming to us, in a way where, boy, it's pretty remarkable how global our reach is, even from this little room here in Nashville. I don't know
Yeah.
what point I'm trying to make,
No,
but
you're making a good point.
Yeah.
You
it's
nailed it.
acknowledging if we're going to perpetuate the culture that we love, that's going to be the way that it's going to be done. We're not going to have, fortunately or unfortunately, we're not going to be able to rebuild in brick and mortar the experience that the five of us have had.
Yeah.
But at least that there is this alternative where a band like Echolyn can get heard and get the support from somebody who is respected in the field, Mark, like you are,
Yeah.
and that kind of does the heavy lifting now, I think.
Yeah. And Glenn, to piggyback what you're saying, the theme on these albums that comes through and through, and Mark, you've done some listening already, is that word and concept of time. So time changes things, but time is also a continuum. Time can be joyous, time can be fearful, time can be unlimited, time can be very limited. And so, what we also tried to do with this new batch of songs, including the title of the albums, Time Silent Radio, was to put in perspective how we're all on this same time continuum, but the concept of it keeps changing.
Yeah.
And we have to, almost like a surfboard, ride it to where we're comfortable, knowing that some people ride it different ways. Some people don't ride it much at all. Some people don't care. Some people have very limited time. We live that. The distance of making this album was oftentimes, when are you available? And so oftentimes time had to dictate, well, we can't do it till next Sunday, which is 7 days away, because that's the only time we all have in common. And it was often frustrating, but it was also joyous because when we all made our purpose in life to carve out that time for each other, that's how this happened. And so that for us, I mean, time has no place. There's another song on Time Silent Radio too. That song talks about that whole concept of time.
Thank you
Yeah, well,
for Thank you
Well
for
said, Chris.
answering that question. I was going to ask it, but if everyone else wants to contribute to that too, that was going to be one of my questions. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is right. If you look at time as like a stage, we're taking snapshots. It's a continuum of change. Change is inevitable. It's always going to happen, and you go through periods of enjoying, prospering, not enjoying, having hardships, horrible things during, when you're viewing that continuum. And these songs are little snapshots of that time period between the last time we worked together and frankly now. And that's it in a nutshell. Of course, it's much deeper, but Chris is right. It's just that. And it's interesting that we're talking about change. And I always try to not complain about it because I mean, it's just part of our lives.
Yeah.
It can be uncomfortable or not. And I like how Glenn would say like, well, for the good of it or the bad of it. He's right about that. It's like, obviously there's things that are bad and horrible, but it's if we're stepping back and we're seeing the big picture. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We have no idea at all. So I think Chris is right. This whole record is those kind of images, those kind of thoughts, and those reflections on that tapestry there.
Yeah.
And
there's
just
I did this with Brett and Ray, but there's a phrase called leaning into the discomfort.
yeah.
We do that very well as friends and as a band because you have to sometimes go to that place that's uncomfortable to discover joy and beauty and to make the music and the art that we're making. And we call each other out. We disagree. There are times we fully agree. That's the craft of working together with other people. Otherwise, you're making a solo album. You're doing a solo project. You're the CEO. You're the boss. You call the shots. But as a true band, we put each other in the room as often as possible. And back to what I shared earlier, sometimes we're not all in the room together. So you learn to check your ego and put trust in the fact that the people in the room will still be thinking of you and will still know you're there so that when they make a decision that they will eventually share with you, it was done in faith and trust, not sort of blind rebellion. Like that's the joy of why we still do this 36 years later. If you told me at 19 years old I would find my musical soulmates, I would just laugh. I'd be like, what are you talking about? Is there even such a thing as a musical soulmate? But these guys are my soulmates. Like, this is why we do this. They're my muse. We work together. Mm-hmm. And this is why we get to put out music, because we understand our differences make us Echolyn. And that's a joyous, beautiful thing.
And why people even presume that change, is not inevitable. You're on a planet that's constantly shifting, that's, earthquakes, volcanoes, things like that. Changes, it has to happen, whether you like it or not. So
control is comfortable. That's what people want. We always want to think
we're in control. We want to make the exactly. Yeah. We want to be safe. And
that's the differentiator, Mark, between people who are artistic and people who are not. I would to say people who are very, very uncomfortable with the idea, the concept of change, they don't really have, it doesn't seem that their nature would take them into more of a creative space. And I think that people who are very comfortable or acknowledge that change is inevitable and they kind of grasp that and use that as colors to paint whatever it is that they're doing. If it's music, it's music. If they're writing a book or a screenplay or a film or whatever, those changes culturally are going to inform that. And I think that they look forward to those experiences as inspiration to be able to move on. So, one of the big differences in my working with this band 30 years ago and working with them, now is that what kept it fresh and wonderful is these guys' ability to embrace that kind of change, acknowledge it lyrically, acknowledge it production wise. Brett did a really remarkable job of producing this record. As a producer myself, to acknowledge and be able to understand and watch not in a fatherly or brotherly way, but as two peers kind of looking at the quality of the work and see where it's progressed. Chris's contributions, Ray's contributions, really a remarkable thing, but that's what I was looking forward to. And that's what I was hoping would happen. Seeing what those changes actually manifested themselves as, and hoping that they were, an improvement, because everybody wants to grow, everybody
Sure.
wants to take those changes and certainly not get worse. And again, I think that you have, the proof of that concept in your hands. This is, forgive me for being so enthusiastic about this project, but I'm very, very proud of what they did, and certainly proud of the small contribution that I made, to the project as well.
We have
Thanks,
It was
Glenn.
having you part of our team, Glenn. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Ray, did you want to add anything? Because he's
I'm
been
a
listening
creature.
really well. And
I'm a
that's
creature of habit. I honestly don't like change, especially at work. I'm a CNA. I work in the medical field, and I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and stress about what my assignment's going to be that day. So I have things planned out in my head, and when things don't work out the way they are planned at work, I kind of short circuit for a little while. But
That's not true, Ray. I mean, I've seen you in bad situations before where you're the rock, you
true.
know?
But there are those moments at work where I get flustered if things don't work out. Not particularly the way I thought they would, but um, just
That's because you
depending on
care.
who's up at certain times. Sorry,
It's because
sorry.
you care. You care. That's why.
I
yeah.
do, I do.
And
I
I
mean, but
think
other than that, um, I
no,
really don't know where else I was going to go with that. But
well, what I was going to say is work, I think, is a little different. I mean, you want work, home, those things to be kind of the comfort zone. And
yeah,
although, and I guess maybe this is an ageism thing. I probably shouldn't say it, but at a certain age, there are sort of expectations. When you're 20, you know, put me wherever you want me, let me learn and grow. But once you've got a certain amount of experience and knowledge, you're like, you're going to put me there, and, So
yeah.
yeah, no, I agree with you there. Like I say, with work and home, you want something to be stable or somewhat stable. So I definitely understand what you're saying there.
And I guess coming like getting back to the music, I'm not very good at what's the word I'm looking for? Jamming or like coming off the cuff with something. It takes me a while to come up with lyrics. So if I'll work on something for a week or so, I'll come in and present it to Brett. He's like, well, that's not really working. Let's sit down and try to come up with another idea. I get stymied. So sometimes my mind goes blank, and it takes a while to get out of that hole that I um, probably put myself in for putting so much time into what I thought was going to be the right thing. Um, I guess that's why we don't jam that much. As
Yeah,
far as what's the
but
word? What is
we're,
that word I'm looking for?
we play off each other. We don't improvise as well.
There you go. Thank you, Chris.
Craft beautifully. So it's one of those things that, like, your comfort zone is working on a part till you craft it into what you want it to be. But that's oftentimes what makes your part so amazing, because instead of just winging it and like, hey, let's see what happens, you actually craft it like a sculpture, and you get a part to where it feels great, and then you bring it to the band. And whether it's working one-on-one with Brett in the studio or we're together in a room, then we flesh it. I call it fleshing it out. Then we
Mhm.
sort of take, sometimes we deconstruct it, sometimes we just add to it and build to it. Like, that's great, what can go with it to add to it and complement it. So, but I'm the opposite. I like being the guy that, like Brett said, like, I need a chord change here or I need a transition. I'm like, okay, I'll try three of them and you tell me which one's your favorite.
I
I like,
love I liked when Ray a lot of times will be playing something and he'll come in with a vocal melody and just say it's an E minor chord and he sings a G sharp and I'm like looking at him like he doesn't hear that does he? It should be. But all of a sudden in my head, I'm like, actually, that's kind of cooler like that. You know what I mean? And you go that way with it. I love that. Or we'll keep the E minor and just have the G sharp up top, and it's cool.
Right.
And then, Glenn a lot of times on the record would be like, "What are you guys doing there? Why you can't sing that note over top of that?" I remember that a bunch of times, Glenn. But those are those moments where it's like, well, I think that's kind of neat. A little dissonance is kind of cool.
Yeah, you made something better.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to try to get into the album because I you guys have just been fantastic so far. All right, yeah, on the review, I compared you a lot to ELO, and I just want to kind of farm that out because it wasn't really. It was more emotional. The emotional effects that I got from some of EL's older albums, and the harmonies between the vocals. You don't have the big bass and the violins and all that stuff, so you don't sound exactly like them. And for those of you that were out there reading my review and saying, well, "What the hell is he listening to? This is not ELO." But Brett nailed it, and I just if you could sort of talk about that comparison between what I was trying to hint at, because you did it better than I did.
Oh yeah. Well, Jeff Lynne, one of my favorite songwriters, producer too, actually, great producer. A lot of times he used those progressions of a major chord to the major seven chord, of that chord to the dominant seven, so forth. It's been used a million times, but that we used one of those kind of progressions in the key of A this time, on Time Has No Place. There's a section in there called Ivy Hill. That's an absolute beautiful part. And when we had that and Ray came up with a melody for it, it was immediately like, yeah, this is definitely. I mean, I thought the same thing. Like, this is like an ELO Jeff Lynne kind of a vibe. And I, as a producer, I'll lean into that a little bit. And I love the fact that Chris may not know that, and he would put his own thing on it that pulls it back away from that again. But even like some of the bends I'm doing on guitar, like that's kind of thing that you would hear on a lot of that stuff in those sections, like that beautiful warm quality, lots of space. It's just a piano doing quarter notes, a little bit of guitar, acoustic guitar, and some nice vocals, and that's ELO right there, which would be the Beatles if you go back one step
Well,
before.
yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
Jeff Lynne was like the fifth Beatle or the sixth Beatle or whatever.
Yeah, I think John Lennon called him a baby Beatle.
Yeah, yeah. No, he loved them.
I think,
Okay.
Mark, it was intention necessarily either. I mean, at the end of the day, there's only 12 notes, and
Yep.
all music that has ever been made was made from those 12 notes.
Yep.
So, I don't know, that there was ever a moment, certainly when I got my hands on it, to go, okay, we're going to try to emulate anything there
Yeah,
at
no,
all.
they didn't. No.
But, to your point, there is we don't live in a vacuum, and there are these really phenomenal broad strokes of music that are out there that kind of set the pace for certain types of expectation as well. But I definitely don't disagree with you at all, Mark.
Okay.
There were moments when I was being exposed to the music for the first time that I would tease Brett a little bit and say to him, "Oh, that's a great, yes part or whatever." And then he'd hurt me physically.
And
Viciously.
we
But
got a question. We got a question about this on a previous interview too, about our influences, and we're all sort of reticent to name those because it's like there's so many of those. We absorb all those things from, like you just said, ELO. Sure, that's there, but I mean, Harry Nilsson, I could think of that progression too. Or I mean, there's tons of people. Radiohead has the same progression on many songs, and they're all there. I mean, classical stuff's the same way. So it's really just it's all that stuff coming in. And like Glenn said, we're not trying to make this sound like anything. But it's all
No,
there because
no.
it's the time period. I said this in the interview the other day. It's really the time period that we exist in is the thing that's infiltrating our brains and, coming back out if we're creative people into the things that we create.
But yeah, I wanted to make sure everyone understood that I wasn't, pigeonholing you into that, because you're absolutely not. I mean, you don't sound exactly like them at all. Okay, this is a tough question, and few people ever answer it, but lately I'm getting people to answer it, so we're going to give it a try. Which of the two is your favorite album? And then we'll also double that with which is your favorite song. I think I've kind of put that in my review, but let's just see how many people either agree or disagree, and hopefully you do.
Mark, I'll take a roundabout way to answer that. I
Okay.
would recommend people listen to 7 first, listen to 2 second. And the reason I say that is it's digestible bits on the 7 because the songs tend to be on the shorter side. But when you get to 2, that's your meal. And
Yeah.
so for me, music, I also like when you get to the end of Water in Our Hands. To me, that's the completion of the 2-album project. And I share that because I had a friend of ours who pre-bought the album back in December, and they got the album, and they said, how am I supposed to listen to this? 2 first, 7 second, 7 first, 2 second. I said, I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
But now that I'm thinking about it, because that friend asked me that question, that's my recommendation. Start with Radio Waves. That'll walk you into the album and get you all the way through to Tiny Star. And then dive right into 2, or maybe spend a few weeks with 7 and then eventually move on to 2, which are the bigger, larger tracks, which some people struggle with getting into because it's just more music.
I'm telling you guys are, it's like you already know what I'm going to ask, and I don't know how that's possible. But no, that was perfect because well, as I say, I like the longs. I jumped right into 2 and then looked at the end of 7 as that was the culmination of everything. And we'll talk about that. And I'm going to do what you just said. I'm going to go back and do it the other way around. And because I would have wanted, Water in Our Hands to be the last song, but I didn't listen to it that way. And you're absolutely right. It gives you a whole different perspective. So thank you. Thank you for that. And for all you guys listening out there, do what he just said, because
Or don't.
or no, yeah.
Because to me, they're 2 chapters from the same book. So you just have to decide, do I want to read chapter 1 or chapter 2, or chapter 2 or chapter 1? They're going to tell the same musical story.
But yeah, Chris, your metaphor falls apart then. Why would I read chapter 2 and then go back to 1, not knowing what 2?
Because I'm a breaker.
For me, sorry.
Go ahead.
For me, it all depends on what kind of time I have. If I'm driving to work, I have a short drive. I'll put on 7. I can get through a few of the songs before I get there. If I'm going to sit and relax, I'll put on 2 because there's more time in that. There's more space. 7 is more to get things done. Boom, 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 and you're done. 7 is, like I said, you need time to sit and relax and get into that one. For me, I guess a sleeper for both albums would be Ennui Blur. For me, that's a sleeper. That'll one that will creep up on you and get you.
Yeah, and it is growing on me. You're right. You're absolutely right. What about, or let's give Glenn a chance.
Oh, I enjoyed mixing Water in Our Hands the most of all of them. But like children, you have favorite things about each one.
Yeah.
And that isn't to denigrate anything else. But there was a real power to my ears to the way that came out. Probably I'm proudest of that one. I love them all, of course I do, and I'm not just saying that, but that one in particular, was definitely I'll be bold and say that's my favorite. So.
I just want to interrupt for a second, Glenn. I could see the reflection of the game in the
He knew you could.
the album on the behind you. What's going on?
It's uh,
Or
we're 5 minutes into the game. It's nothing, nothing. So
Okay, sorry.
Okay. He's taking.
I apologize. I couldn't sneak it through, could I?
No,
That's good.
you're fine.
Sorry,
Yeah,
as a former person that works security, I try to see everything.
Right.
that's awesome. Yeah. If the Seahawks were in it, I'd have it on here. But anyway,
Well,
Sorry, I
uh,
didn't mean to
we're,
interrupt.
we're
no, no, that
the
was good.
Lincoln Titans.
Okay, let's do what he said. Let's go through the shorter ones. Uh,
And by the way,
well, we
I
can
just
do.
want to
Yeah,
clarify
go ahead.
shorter ones. Let's clarify this, all right? Because
Yeah,
you
they're
know
not. Yeah, yeah.
they're not short. I mean,
Yeah,
they're all pushing five,
yeah.
7, 8, 9 minutes. I mean, they're not. And I'm not saying that makes it better or worse. I'm just saying they're a bit longer.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and I don't mean for it to sound like that either. Yeah, you're
That's why I mean, we all put the three of us pushed to have a 45-minute album and a 45-minute album. That's the way I look at them. I mean, they're just two 45-minute things that you can digest the way that I think the three of us would listen to music. We listen to albums, you know what I mean, that kind of a thing.
And
So
yet when when Brett came to me to mix the record, he was like, "Oh, it's only 9 songs."
that's exactly it. Yeah,
that's all. Yeah.
it's funny. Glenn's totally right because he was I would say, well, we only got one song left,
Right.
and
Which
it's
was
60
like
minutes
And,
long.
albums worth
yeah.
of material in that one song. But
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so on the whatever you want to call it, number seven,
It's the minor seven.
we could do, song by song, or let's just talk about your highlights. You tell me what you want to do. We can go in either direction.
do you have a favorite song? Maybe that's how we start. Did
Oh,
a
yeah.
one
Yeah.
jump out when you want to hear some feedback or insight to it?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, but it's not just about me, but definitely cul-de-sacs and tunnels. Just when I saw that word cul-de-sacs, it took me back to Duke, which your song is nothing like that song. But I mean, just the word, just uh, because I'm such a Genesis fan. But no, not at all like that. But just that emotional uh, vocals that you guys do, and the music, obviously, too. It's very, very. It pulls at your heartstrings, and and like I think I said in the review, if you're not feeling some kind of emotion, pinch yourself because just the way that thing starts. So anyway, that on that album, that's mine. But I do like on well, anyway, go ahead with that one.
Ray, why don't you talk a little bit
Uh,
about the lyrics?
well, the I got the title of the song from Brett sent me the lyrics for the center of the song, and the we used to joke years ago that we were all going to buy land together, and we'd live on the same property. We would just have tunnels going
No,
from. We wouldn't never have to go outside. We just use the tunnels to go, from house to house. So I'm glad
especially
that
in this
when
weather.
our
Yeah, especially in the weather you're going through.
yes, exactly. But when he sent me the music, or I should say the words, I gravitated to that right away. The song, I guess, Brett, if you want to talk about the music for that, and then I'll go back to the lyrics.
Yeah, sure. This is another well, you could, if you wanted to talk about that progression again of those major to the dominant seven, or even the augmented six. These are things that you see some of my favorite songwriters do, and this is in there. It gives a little bit of, and it's got that that quarter note kind of thing with the piano that I'm drawn to as well. That Chris just did intuitively. I wanted to have space in this, and Chris really kind of set the tone for it with his piano. When he tracked the piano for this back in 2016, it was just to a click track and maybe just a couple scratch acoustic guitar chords, and he really set the pace with it. And then the where it picks up in the second half, again, I just had an acoustic in there, but he sort of came up with the melodies in there that really set the vibe. And despite the fact that those were recorded so long ago, they were the basis for building the song. And the words changed from Ray's point of view two times until he found this stuff. And then I built on what Chris had laid down. And there you go. Jordan played to it. I waited for the guitars till Jordan was done, and then I just sort of added things on based on what the piano was doing, and it came together beautifully. It's one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite song on that collection of 7 songs. It's just something that came out really nice about it.
One more thing that I forgot to add, and I didn't put it in the review either, that I'd like to just mention. It seems like Radio Waves, Silent Years, Cul-de-sac, and maybe Boulders and Hills. They're more of that upbeat, and then it seems to go down real quick. And I think you got the rapping and that in there. And then it comes back with Tiny Star. I definitely want to talk about that one, but not yet. But where like I say, the way I listened to it, that seemed like the moral to the story in the end of the. But
Well,
did
you have
you do that on purpose, or
no, we didn't do it on purpose.
Do you guys even feel that way?
Well, when
just,
you're creating stuff, you have to have relationships between things of, up and down, dark and light, all that. So the positioning of those songs was purposeful for that reason. And also, like we talked about with change and notating the stage of time with different moments, the good will be better when it's next to the bad.
Okay.
And as you progress, you have that. So yes, you're right. There's things in there that are very beautiful and positive, like the lyrics on Radio Waves, and Tiny Star. Whereas in the middle, there's other things in there that are creeping in that aren't necessarily horrible or bad.
No, no.
Some of them really are. Like on Boulders on Hills gets pretty dark, but you need all that kind of stuff. It's not that it's purposely written that way. It's just real. It's authentic. But they were purposely put next to each other for a reason, for those kind of shade differences.
Yeah, sometimes we get technical and we'll actually say, what chord did that song end on? And what chord does the next song start with? And if they're the same chord, sometimes that doesn't make sense to put them next to each other because there is no sonic change or landscape change. A lot of times it's just, how do these songs feel in the order they're in? Do they tell a story? Do they take people on an emotional journey? And that really, at the end of the day, most times we have 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways we want to lay songs out, and then that's what dictates that. We were going to close our 2012 album with Island, and then it ended up becoming the opener on that album. And so that's a perfect example of, we were all pretty set on, let's close with the giant long song. And then last minute, we were like, wait a minute, what if we put that song first and then went into Headright? So you hit them hard with something that's, 18 minutes and then put the little 3.5-minute song next. At the end of the day, I think it all would have worked. But sometimes those decisions do drive, how do you pull people into the album and invite them into your next piece of art? How do you give them a welcome? I think Radio Waves does it really well on this album because it's that whole concept of dialing in your favorite radio station. And as a kid who grew up in the 70s and 80s and listened to a lot of radio, I remember the times you're moving the antenna, you're turning the dial, you're just trying to get it to come in just enough so you can pick up that radio wave and hear your latest favorite song, whatever the DJ is spinning.
That's right.
I get that joyous feeling like when Ray and I were writing it about that bursting outside when you're a kid and just running, and your parents go outside and run around, or being in the back of a car listening to music and it's hot, and there's no air conditioner and leather seats or vinyl seats. I just love that. It's such a cool images.
And in the review, and I can't remember which song now, but in the review, I mentioned that I had a little boombox, And I actually took, and when I said that, it wasn't just something I thought up. I actually used to take that up on this big hill that overlooked this freeway they were building in Cleveland. And I sat and listened to El Dorado and One Summer Dream. And actually, I listened to that almost every summer once it came out, or at the end of the summer. And I actually did that. And I mean, it wasn't just this, something I thought up. So yeah, exactly like that. You really feel the emotion, you're experiencing it. And that's the other thing about this album. You have to experience it. It's not you're listening, obviously, but there's a whole experience if you listen, and we'll come back to the lyrics now. Ray's going to talk about the lyrics, and those lyrics just bring that experience back along with the music.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what am I speaking on? The cul-de-sac?
Lyrics.
It's based on I know we don't
Ah,
a true story. I know, Brett. That's where I was like, it's based on, and I heard you. No, it's
yeah.
you can interpret it any way you like, but it's all everything we do is based on true stories.
One of my pet peeves, Mark, is that when people look at something or listen to something, the beauty comes from the connection that they form in it. And I just absolutely hate when an artist, before I listen to it, tells me what the song's about. Because it just ruins it for me. Because what if I don't have that experience? I want to get my own experience out of it. I want to tap
Okay.
into a line or a phrase or a paragraph my own way. And I'm not trying to be weird about it, but I just think it's really important. The more ambiguity, we can talk in general terms, but I just think telling like, oh, well, this is a song about, it's like right off the bat, I'm not interested anymore. I'm just
Yeah.
not interested
That's a
in it.
shame. Yeah.
And like
You're,
when Ray would tell me, he's like, Ray would be, and actually Katie too, my wife, she'd be like, well, this is, I'm like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. And because I honestly find Ray's words beautiful at times, and the reason
At
for that,
times.
well, and the reason for
No,
that, the reason for that is because I attach my own meaning to it. That's what we do. We are meaning making machines, and
Yeah.
to truncate that by telling somebody how to think about something, you're taking that thing away.
So
That's my speech
probably,
on this. Go ahead and tell them what it's about if
it's
you
the
want.
joy of discovery. It's the
well, no,
joy.
I probably shouldn't mention Tiny Star then.
Well,
But I
you
just
can from your point of view, Mark. If you have a point of
okay.
view, I'm
I just
dying to hear what you think about it because that's more important to me than what I meant by something. You know what I mean? I don't want to listen to
okay.
Pete Townsend tell me about what who are yous about. I don't care. I
Okay.
don't care. I just want to.
And I don't think he's ever completely answered that question either. But yeah, I mean,
It becomes your song.
I mean, what did John Anderson mean when he said "dawn of the light lying between"? I don't care. I
yeah,
don't care.
well,
He
yeah,
actually told me what he meant, and it was
What?
very, very disappointing.
There
oh,
you go.
really?
There you go.
How
Well,
many
how
books?
about Awaken? We got thousands of questions for you. I would love to know about Awaken because to me, it's almost like a religious experience. I mean, it's not, but it's uh,
After the fact, it's cool. I'm with you, Mark. I totally understand what you're saying, but I think that initial handshake that we have with another human being or creative thing, it's we are making this music to shake hands with people, not to all of a sudden tell them who we are. We're letting them judge who we are. You know what I mean? That's important to me.
okay. With Tiny Star, I kind of compared it to sort of the Wizard of Oz. And I don't know if you saw the review I did or anything like that. And you guys kept talking about, I want to get back home. I want to get back home. And there's only one thing that could come into my mind on that. And it was almost perfect because your wife comes in and says, you are home, basically. All you have to do is, capture it or whatever. That's what I saw. at the end. But again, that's like you said, that was my interpretation. Um,
That's absolutely beautiful and right for you. And by you saying that, I mean, I'm working on a video that the three of us are going to put out for Tiny Star. I would love, I'm looking for images, and that's a great one to incorporate in there. That sense of finding home, but always being there. And anyway, that's a great image. I love it. Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's an honor for
It,
somebody to attach their own meaning to that.
it
thank
was
you.
interesting to me, Mark, to hear you talk about the music that influenced you, and which records you were saying, oh, this one um, piece of music reminded you of this idyllic time, and you were listening to Duke or one of the other Genesis records, and not to beat this to death, but how dare I come in to your world and go, no, Mark, your interpretation of it is
Well,
completely wrong. It has nothing to do with
yeah.
anything that you think, and I do feel the same way. When I hear something, and I may have the lyrics right in front of me as I'm working, whether I'm producing, engineering, mixing, co-writing, whatever that might be, I feel the same. I want that special piece of magic to kind of be only my thing. I don't want to
Oh
share
yeah. No, no, no.
else, right? And again, not to make an issue of this because it's a valid and great question. People want interpretation of what it is that they're hearing. They want the artist's perspective. But I think one of the most compelling things for me about Yes was that the lyrics to some were nonsensical. To me, were these word pictures that I would go, oh my gosh, this, my interpretation of it. And that kind of participation to a certain degree is missing from a lot of today's music. I do a lot of very contemporary music as well. And
Yeah.
the thing that the mystery is missing a little bit. The interpretation is, it's just so completely laid out there and kind of so obvious that your intellectual and almost creative participation is no longer called for. And
And I'll
I love to be able to do exactly what you do, Mark, is like to sit there and somehow or other tie it to this meaningful memory of a place I was, or a forgive this, but a woman I dated and what she smelled like, or like just these sensory kind of
well, and I do that not, and I always at the end of it, I'm like, no, this is not what they were doing or whatever. This is just the way I feel, and it's to sort of give list these people that are reading this some sort of way of summing this up. Now they might,
context.
and that's why I ask you guys. You may not you guys, but people may completely disagree and say, "Whoa, he was way off base." And that's okay. They have a right to. Everyone has, like Brett said, everyone has a right to interpret this the way they want to. That's just my history, my background, and just to add to what Glenn's saying, I think, and this is gonna piss people off, I'm sure, but all of us grew up at a time when you had to read books. You had to read books to get through all of your undergraduate work. And I don't think that, I'm not saying they don't. I know they have to go through the same thing that we did, I'm sure. But you can get a lot on the internet, synopsis, things like that. You don't sit there and read that whole book. And I think that because this is not just happening in music, it's where another part of my life that I really miss movies. We're just remaking the same movies with different people and different colors and different, and I've already seen that one, and you're never gonna beat, the original. And it's a shame, really, because there are, like you guys, and there are some other people out there are making original and dynamic stuff. But Glenn, you tell me if I'm way off base, but I
No,
think it has a
I
lot
don't
to
think you're
do.
off base at all, because far be it from me to even pass that kind of a judgment at
And
all. I
maybe
hear
I'm wrong. Yeah,
you, man. It's this is this is an interesting conversation. A
definitely.
different than maybe what we might have anticipated, but this segment of it, there is a there to me there's a cultural shift, and that cultural shift is a different type of immersion. So maybe the immersion that we felt when we were younger came in terms of spending more time with a record or a book or a movie or whatever, and now the chunks are much shorter. Echolyn did a great job in giving you both. You've got the one that you could, the record that you could immerse yourself in, and you've got the smaller bits to it. But in being a dad and seeing, my daughter's experience culturally and how she ingests the arts, it's a different thing. Is it better? Is it worse? I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But I agree with you, Mark. I don't think anything that you're saying is off base in any way at all. I just think it's like, hey, you're a teacher, and Brett is a teacher as well, and Brett and I and actually Chris is also a teacher,
Yeah.
and I'm a student. You know what I mean? I'm a
We're
student,
all students. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Even if I am a teacher, I'm learning from
right?
you guys. I'm learning from
Uh,
everybody. Yeah, you have to.
I think look,
There is no even. I've had people say I don't have my PhD. I'm ABD. I'm close to getting it. But anyway, I've had people say, "Well, PhDs they know everything." No, they know everything about that particular subject they got their PhD in. You ask them about medicine, they have no idea. They might be more ignorant than the regular person. So yeah,
I think we would all agree
yeah,
that the purpose, for example, of Echolyn making the types of records that they do is I think that they encourage the listener to participate in a way that maybe modern contemporary based music
yeah,
doesn't want that. It doesn't serve the same function. And for somebody, not to make this about me, but for somebody like myself, I enjoy the relief of being part of that creative process because it is more meaningful to me. I do relate to it on a different level because I am an older gentleman. I'm not a 17-year-old, but I do work with 17-year-old artists, and the purpose of that very, very different culturally. Relevancy components of it, all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's all fair game. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make. It's all fair game. And the great news from my perspective is that these huge broad strokes that exist culturally can be tapped by anyone at any time. I can still put my musical influences in front of my daughters or in front of people that I work with. During this process, Brett shared music with me, Ray shared music with me, Chris shared music with me, stuff I've never heard before. And that goes into our collective bank to be used
experience.
and filed away for another time when we need to draw from yet another influence. And boy, to have that at our fingertips is a remarkable, remarkable thing to me.
Yeah.
Sorry to get into the weeds on this, by the
No,
way, but
Me too. Me too. So
no,
let's let somebody else talk about this.
well,
Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
throw as someone not writing the lyrics on our albums, I've learned long ago to not ask these guys what every song and every lyric is about
Oh,
because I'm also making my own interpretation, being the guy who mainly adds music, right? As a co-composer, that's the world I'm most comfortable in, who occasionally has written some words, but not much. I love just making the songs mine so that it's okay for me as a fan to still listen to the music I'm a part of,
bingo.
that I can still love and enjoy it and not feel like it's this overwrought clinical session of I did that, I played that, I know that this means like right now, I listen to this album and pieces of this album every single day
Yeah,
because it's still fresh, new, and exciting to me. And I have that out of body experience every now and then where I'm like, that is such a cool part. And then sometimes I'm like, Oh yeah, I remember working on that with Brett and Ray and Jordan. Like I'm in this. Like, but it's okay that I have the separation. My favorite thing is thinking about music as themes. So you can have light and joy, frustration, hope, redemption. Like all those things are part of our collective human experience. And I think that's something that Brett and Ray do amazingly well is that they bring those themes in and then they allow us, the listeners who didn't write the words, to walk away with our own interpretation of, oh, so that was a joyous song. That was a hopeful song. That's a really frustrating song. I get frustrated too. That song has a lot of hope in it. That song has redemption in it. And I love that. I think we've done that really well over the years. To me, this is a continuation of that and an opportunity for people to again write their own story, but hear our stories and our messages and walk away with their own meaning to it. That's just it's going to make it very personal. It's going to what it's why listens to something 10 times, not once.
And that's another thing with music reviews. It's like I tell my students, it's a picture in time.
Yep.
I've only had about a month to, listen to this every day, like you just said. I'm hearing new things, and now that you told me to reverse the order, I'm going to try that and may feel completely different. So yeah, this is
That's the
this is one
that
of the, I'm just going to say one more thing and then I'm going to shut up. I'm going to try to shut up. But yeah, these two are kind of, they're the perfect kind of album that I remember from my childhood, where they're going to grow on you. They're going to change and evolve. You're going to hear things. So thank you. That was excellent, Chris, what you said there.
yeah, it's a big payoff when I hear Chris comment on the words because he's coming at it from a different point than Ray and I are on those spots. And when he says like, "Oh, this is such a beautiful thing. It's such an upbeat thing," I am just like, "Wow, that's my friend getting something out of this." I'm not going to correct him, and I'm not certainly not going to tell him where it comes from for me because many times I don't even know where that is. It just might be a thought that I'm trying to put into some sort of words of a way that I was feeling. I think Ray feels the same way sometimes with
Oh
some of
yeah.
this stuff. And it is like it's for me a song like what we have here, all these songs, as a songwriter, you try to get better with things of that classic show don't tell situation. I think good cinema is the same way. And there's always gonna be, I would hope, good songwriters out there and good filmmakers out there that
I hope.
allow that to happen. Um, because of the way we share music and movies these days, and the ease of doing it, there's more amateur stuff that is part of our world nowadays. And when I say amateur, I mean people that are coming into it in a nascent form. Okay, and that's fine. We all come into that, but instead of those people taking time and having them shut down or learning and stuff like that, now it's just available to everybody. So we have to be aware of that as older people, as we all are, that we can share our experiences with younger students. Like me, I teach college students. Chris teaches junior high. If you have young kids in your family, where you can share that information and let them know about the history of things. Like, you see things online with people,
Yeah,
songwriters, like playing chord sequences that 1564. I don't want to hear that anymore. And students of songwriting should understand why that's the case, and it would help them. It's like if I was working with a young songwriter, I'm like, check this out, listen to this, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, this is used in all these songs, and steer them away from that to find new and original things. That's our job as older people, to share information that we know with
yeah.
people in a positive way so that we can get them better than we are when they become our age, right?
That's what we all hope for. Yeah.
That's what we're doing. Yeah. I mean, and we fight that all the time. So anyway, that's my point of view on these big subjects that we're bringing.
That's a good, no, that's a good point. I mean, you get to this age where we are and you're like, okay, now I have time finally. I can sit back and watch all these new movies that are going to come out, and I'm watching reruns. And it's like, no, this isn't what I wanted.
I talk about it all the time with my students because I have a lot of game design students and they talk about superhero movies and things like that. And I'm like, guys, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the
Yeah.
history of film and what that movie is doing in the history of film, contextually speaking. And it's good for them because if anybody wants to be a filmmaker, they're going to hopefully be progressing from those things, and moving on to new things fast rather than doing the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, we delivered the bomb.
One thing
Right?
I'll
Yeah,
throw
go ahead.
throw in the mix because it kind of ties what you're talking about, and then the whole thing about interpretation of lyrics together. One of the things that I really love about Echolyn is that they remind me of Lost in Translation, that film Lost in
Yeah.
Translation. There's something about the ephemeral nature of that film, how it was shot, how it was presented, how the narrative actually progresses in a more vague kind of sense. And there's a lot to me of those kinds of sonic visual cues in what Echolyn is capable of delivering that I don't know why. It just kind of reminds me of those types of movies, but that film in particular.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Yeah, Sophia
Bill
Coppola,
Murray,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bill Murray's
Yeah.
Sophia Coppola directed it. I think
Yeah.
she wrote it too, actually. Yeah.
yeah, it's great. You leave that film thinking that you actually were there.
Yeah.
And for you, there may have been a completely different place
There.
than the intention of the movie. But I know what I feel when I watch that film, and it's vague enough for me to paint, excuse me, travel experiences that I had making records all these years, and relational components of how I interacted with women and friends of mine who were men, and I get the same. I do get a lot of that, a lot of that from this record in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Oh
I
yeah.
just watched Eraserhead the other day because obviously because
Oh yeah.
David Lynch died, and I never saw it before, but I'm like, what the heck's going on? But I read about it and stuff like that, and it was really neat because that was a movie that Mel Brooks actually gave David Lynch a break on. That's the thing. And Brooks came at it, was like, he saw it and he was like, I got to work with this guy on a project, and ended up working with him on The Elephant Man. And it's just cool. Like, what does that movie mean? Well, there's a lot of interpretations of it, and I don't want to go and watch David Lynch talk about what it
Explain.
means.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to have that.
I think that was one of the sayings that people want film to make sense, and it's like it doesn't make sense, because the world doesn't always make sense.
I'll say this with
I don't remember the exact quote, but that was the sort of basic.
at the same time, I think a good film and good music, good art, good painting still is able to, I think at its best, convey some sort of emotion to you that you can grasp onto. Now that's interpretive, meaning the emotion that you get out of it is up to you. But to be able to fine tune that and do that, I think is a hallmark of good art. I would hope it's not like Dadaism where you just have like a toilet. You know what I mean? And it's like the points of those things were that the world is in fact meaningless post World War One, and we
Yeah.
can still put our own interpretation onto that. But I think for myself, we have a couple moments on this record where the emotions that Ray and I and Chris were mounting behind, and the lyrics that were even focusing all that energy, we actually do connect in a cool way with it. And I think Water in Our Hands has those moments, as do cul-de-sacs and tunnels and a bunch of other ones too. There are moments where it's like it's very clear that we're conveying something, and you can feel it. It's a really cool thing.
Yeah,
I'm more of a literal kind of writer. If I stub my toe, I'm going to tell you I stubbed my toe, and then move on to the pain. Brett will be more poetic, and he'll describe the um,
The
like
agony.
the ambiance of the room while the stubbing of the toe is going on. Even though we're both saying the same thing, you wouldn't know that he stubbed his toe with the way he projects it. And I really try to do that a little more with the way I write. And he's inspiring me to push, to get out of I stubbed my toe and it effing hurt. And like
Look,
I said, he'll say like the breeze was blowing a certain way in the room and it pushed me towards this thing. And you
I
know,
never said that. I never said that.
no, you didn't, but you
Look to the skies with the red piggy
piggy
eyes.
There
eyes.
you
Oh
go.
Lord, it's raining. Yeah, so we push each other that way. It's like you've already said that, that you stubbed your toe. Say it a different way. Like, yeah, you're right. I should. So it keeps me honest with the way I write, and
I like
hopefully
songs also had so much to them before words got added. Back to what Brett's talking about, we all knew years ago we had a batch of really great songs, and most of them had no lyrics or vocal lines yet. Like it was just music. That's how the album was written. And so, what I always love is when you know you have something special, then to be able to say, okay, so now we're going to ice the cake because now we're going to add meaning through lyrics and melodies and words and vocal harmonies. Like that's how we just knew this project was going to be special. And truth be told, it's why we took our time to do it right. Because even as of 2 years ago, we were like, yeah, this will be coming out very soon. And all of a sudden, very soon became 2 more years. I'm glad we took our time because we
yeah.
allowed the songs to become what they should have always been. And we needed that time to do that, which included getting everything to the finish line at the same time. Sometimes bands, you can tell they've rushed albums because you're like, wow, there's 2 really good songs on this album, and the rest seems kind of hodgepodge and throwaway. And oftentimes it's because it is. They've
Yeah.
written 28 songs and they picked the 8 that they thought were best. We wrote 9 songs for this album, and all 9 songs are coming out at the same time. And that's because they all deserve to be heard. And we're very proud of it.
Mhm.
You should be. You should be. Anything else you guys want to say about number 7? Any other songs in particular? We've hit a few of them, but we've skipped
No,
them.
that's great. It's
I would
great.
just keep listening because there's
Yeah.
so much to glean from every single track. There's
Yeah.
little musical gems that you'll keep appearing and reappearing, and that's what makes a great album. I think if you keep listening, you'll keep getting more musical mileage from it.
Yep.
All right. On the other album, the 2, I will jump on Water in Our Hands first because that definitely I think I agree with Glenn. I think that's the best song on both of them. And I think it was Chris that answered this, but it may have been somebody else, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong. But on the second part, there's that Jethro Tull living in the past rhythm. They didn't copy him or anything, but the minute I mean, I'm just listening to this and I heard that rhythm, and I the words from Ian just were there before
You're
you guys had a chance to sing. I'm like, yeah, I'm smiling and I'm walking. I do anything for your water.
he's talking about the you guys don't know that song, but
Oh, I'm
I think
sorry. Yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
in part 2 of us, there's a rhythm of going doom gat doom da doom gat
It's the
da
5/4 section.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and that's exactly, he's right. That echoes "Living in the Past" by Jethro Tull.
Which is
But
cool that Ray and I don't know that.
no, I do know the Jethro Tull because Brett and
Oh,
I kind of laughed to each other while we were working on the melody for that, and you're like, have it. The words will take you far away from what the way Jethro Tull presented
Yes,
that part.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You'll walk a mile for the water, but this is water in your hands. This is something different. So okay, we'll just throw this one out there. It's off base and everything, but what's your favorite Tull album?
You're gonna have to ask Glenn for that one. Glenn and I think. Well, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for Glenn, but I'll say Minstrel in the Gallery is my favorite one.
Oh my God.
How about you, Glenn?
Likewise. By
Yeah.
by far, by far.
And everyone says, the, God, now I
Passion
can't
play.
remember. Huh?
Aqualung, passion, not
Thick as a brick.
Thick as a brick. Everyone
I
says
mean,
thick as a
I
brick.
love,
And I love it. It's a good album. But
Minstrel
right,
is struck the right
Minstrel
balance.
in the Gallery, I don't know why. It to me, okay, here it is. It transports me uh, back to that time, which I've obviously never lived in, but I feel like I'm there. Um, in some kind of 15th, 14th century, theater listening to this, and it does for me. And the others, I love Aqualung, I love Songs from the Woods, all those. But and Songs from the Woods somewhat does it. It's perfect for the fall. I'll put that on almost every fall. But yeah, I agree with you, Mister. Why do you guys think, or whichever album?
I'm going to say for me, I think I have. I think you said songs from the woods.
Songs
I,
from the
I
Wood.
yeah, I don't
Songs from
know
the Woods.
very much Jethro Tull, but I do have that one on 8-track, and I remember listening to that years ago. Solstice Bells, I think, is on that one.
Yep.
One of my favorite Tull songs.
The
But
Mouse
I mean,
Police. Was there like the Mouse Police never sleeps? What's that one on?
No, I think that's
One Brown
Heavy
Mouse.
One
That's
Brown
either
Mouse.
Heavy Horses or
Okay.
They lost me by then.
Watch
Me too.
the Weather Watch. I love that quote from the Weather album. I can't think of the name of the album right now. But yeah, there's a quote about the storm coming in, and it's fantastic. Anyone else? I'm sorry, I got to.
No.
Well, I'll just share for me. I don't know or own any Tull. So that's one thing that when I joined this band years ago, we had sort of a time warp of what we liked and listened to and what we grew up with. And as shared before, I don't have older brothers. I was the oldest. So I was getting into music on my own in the 80s. And it's just fascinating to me to sometimes hear you guys talk about albums that I honestly have no clue or concept of. But at the same time, there's probably music I grew up listening to that none of you liked or listened to. So it's cool and fascinating for me to sort of be on the wall listening and going, yeah, I don't really know much about this band or any of their music, but it's cool that my bandmates have influences from it and also like and listen to some of it. So that's a big brother thing for me, where maybe I now go find and discover some Jethro Tull.
Oh,
Chris,
yeah.
Chris,
There's plenty out there. He's made how many albums? There's a lot of music out there.
What were you saying, Glenn?
I was
Okay.
saying to Chris, what's your Desert Island 5 then?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. See, I'm a
That's okay.
huge fan, Pat Metheny. I love Secret Story. That's on there. Radiohead, The Bends. That to me is like such a killer rock album, but artistic. Alan Holdsworth. I love his Secrets album. I'm a Stravinsky fan, so like when I'm dead and gone, please play The Rite of Spring in my honor. I love that piece. It's just one of those things that it's kind of coming from all over the place, but it's weird for me sometimes because my background was more classical and jazz just from growing up being a classical piano player to start. And then my classical piano teacher died when I was 15. He went into the hospital on a Friday and died of pneumonia on Monday. And my mom desperately trying to find me another piano teacher and called Temple University and found a 22-year-old who was an assistant, a teaching assistant. And that's the person who sort of introduced me to this concept of jazz and chord changes, and the rest is history. But yeah, it's just interesting for me because I oftentimes have a little list off to the side where it's like, I need to go listen to that. I need to discover that. Rhett, do you remember that time we were in your brother's basement and I made the silly comment, I don't really know any Led Zeppelin songs?
Yeah.
You're like, we're going to sit you down with and we listened to the entire box set. And by the end, I was like, Okay, I knew about 50% of those.
That's right. I remember that.
Before
But I
you,
didn't know it was Led Zeppelin. That was the weird thing. Like I heard it on the radio, but the DJ never said this was Led Zeppelin because the rest of the world probably knew that. I didn't.
Yeah.
So
all right, before we leave Tull, I just want to ask Glenn and also mention to you, Chris, don't pass up the early records. I was definitely a Led Zeppelin. I was a blues fan probably before I was progressive rock. Stand Up, some of those early albums, Benefit,
It was great.
people don't even listen to they that can't be told. It is, and it
it,
was, and uh, it. Some of them are as good as some of the Led Zeppelin albums. So please get both sides. There's definitely a progressive. He's been progressive, I think, ever since the last one of those blues albums. But also go back and listen to some of those blues albums. They are. What do you think, Glenn?
I would agree. I'd ask you, Mark, without any explanations or because I don't know what our time limits are, but what are your 3 or 5 records that you would be I can't live without? What
One
would
of them's written back to me, Foxtrot. Yeah, I would, and he mentioned, passing away. If they don't play Supper's Ready, I mean, I won't be there to
okay.
hear it, but that is, I've already told everyone that one is the final one. So yeah, definitely that. I'd say on the other side here, after that, it gets tough because there's, like I say, there's the blues side of me, and then there's the progressive. I'd say that's first, and then Led Zeppelin. Actually, Kashmir. It used to be Stairway to Heaven, but there's something about Kashmir that just that. What is it? The storm in the, I forget how he says it, but anyway, there's that and three. Oh God.
Oh, it's fine.
It's probably gonna be, it'll be yes, it could be Rush, but it's probably gonna be this
Close
one
to
right
the edge
here.
should be on there.
Huh?
Close to the edge should probably be on there, I
Yeah,
think.
no, definitely close to the edges is in the top 10. But also this one here, because Awaken has taken over. I don't know why. I don't know if you've seen they did a show in San Luis Obispo, and it was, I think, the last time everyone was still alive and still together.
Wow.
And they do an incredible version of Awaken, and Wakeman is the keyboardist and everything, and it's like Chris is still there, and it like I say, it's like in a not it's like Supper's Ready. It just you and someday I'm going to write about Supper's Ready. I just and it's for the same reason that Brett said. I don't want to sort of this is what I think, and it's the authority. It's not the authority. It's just the way that I see that song, and everyone interprets it
I
differently.
think
But
Steve Hackett does a really, really nice job. I forget the lead singer's name,
no,
but
no, 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 no. I don't agree. I mean, Steve does, yeah, absolutely, but no, it
you
should
don't
be
you don't like the guy
not
who's
a big fan. I mean, he's a nice guy and all. I'm not attacking him
oh
personally.
yes.
But I would prefer the guy from Italy that does, and why can't I think of their name? Um, that's all they do is cover Genesis.
Well,
Um, I can't think of the
by the way,
name.
guys, this is what happens when you invite me.
No, 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 no. Thank you. No, no, it's age. It's age. But and
We have now
he's not going to
drifted
be.
off into
They're not
another.
going to be happy, but they're actually out on tour right now doing one of the albums in Europe, and they do that from time to time. They'll pick, uh, Foxtrot or something like that, and they'll do the whole album.
Wow.
But
Wow.
As we keep talking, it'll come back to me, but I
And
just
apologies for disrupting the context.
no, 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 no. But yeah, no, I'd rather hear him because I mean, there's nobody like Peter Gabriel. No one, even Phil Collins
Yeah,
didn't even come close. But this guy comes pretty close.
yeah.
Hey, Mark, one thing I wanted to ask for your listeners is
Sure.
one thing that we're discovering right now is there are a lot of people don't have this music yet, our new albums.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is obviously use this as sort of a little bit of a hype machine, but also to help people sort of find an access or an on ramp to Echolyn. We clearly have a fan base that already exists, but we're also trying to tap into a new sort of scene of listeners that are out there.
Mhm.
Uh, we definitely want to promote that we have a website, echolyn.com. And you probably are aware that there is, I guess it's almost a week away now, on February 3rd, there's going to be an official pre sale for the street release date of March 7th that people can go to echolyn.com to get jump off links to like Bandcamp, iTunes, and other places that'll be selling the album. People who did pre purchase ahead of time, some people purchased the CDs, they'll be shipping just prior to the March 7th date. But the great thing is that there's so many people out there who didn't know about the pre-sale or didn't partake in the pre-sale. We appreciate everything you're doing, not only in the written review that you posted, which we loved and was great. You took so much time with that, but also for doing this Zoom interview to let people know that we really are just a week away from that pre-sale happening. And then very quickly, it'll be March 7th, and there will be digital and physical product available at that point internationally, worldwide.
Thank you for doing that because you know absolutely more about it than I do. So don't worry about pushing this album. I'm right behind you. Glenn, it was The Watch. Have you heard of The Watch? You got to. Uh, when you get a chance, just tune in and listen to them. And again, no one is Peter Gabriel, but this guy comes pretty darn close. And the band, Steve Hackett has sat in with the band, has played with the band live and everything. And I don't want to talk for him, but I think he likes what they're doing, or at least
He
somewhat.
kind of endorses it. Brett, did you not have some interaction with Hackett?
I
Or maybe
did.
I'm, yeah.
Yeah, I did. I did a benefit over in Wales, um, and he came out and played. I sang the high harmony on "I Know What I Like" for that. They
Oh,
asked me to
wow.
come out and do that, so I sang. There's always been Ethel, Jacob,
Yeah,
wake up,
yeah.
you've got it. Did all that, and then Paul played with Hackett on. I want to say, what's the one on Wind and Wuthering that he wrote? Uh,
Ripples?
no,
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 Wind and
no.
Wuthering. That's I
Yeah,
forget. Doesn't matter.
yeah, no, that's Trick. That's on Trick.
Yeah, it
Um,
does. But anyway, that's how I ran him. Yeah, actually, I
Afterglow.
no, it doesn't matter. It's one of those.
Okay.
But I remember I was playing Cuckoo Cocoon, and I was like,
Oh,
"How do you?
wow.
Is this how you play this?" And then there's a video of it actually online. He was showing how to actually play the guitar part, which was cool. But anyway, I digress. Um,
This is about
Can,
digression, isn't it?
it
can I
is
can
true.
I throw a short story in here? And Glenn will probably like this. Do you remember GTR?
Of course.
Yeah. I went to the concert. After the concert, stayed out there waiting patiently because people don't wait. And if you don't wait, you miss moments like this. So anyway, waiting out there, all of a sudden, Steve and Chris Squire walk out, and I'm like, "Holy moly! It was worth the wait." And Chris, I thought it would be Steve, but it was Chris. I thought Chris was really reserved. They're both wonderful guys. They'll talk about anything you ask them, anything. They're more than willing to talk about it. They like fans. They like people enjoying their music. But Chris walks out and he goes, Okay. Any questions out there? Anything is, nothing is off. And we were all like, you know, what do you ask this hero that you've been listening to for years? So that just a real quick one. But yeah, that I really wish there would have been a second act for that album. And the lead singer was fantastic too. And I haven't kept up with him to see what he's up to, but that's another. We're getting off of you guys. I want to get back to you guys. But you guys know a hell of a lot of music and love a lot of wonderful music too. Um, anything else you guys want to say about water in your hands? Because I kind of
No, what we should say this in closing that first off, we appreciate your time a lot, Mark. This has been great. And what I would say about those songs is check them out. They're different. They're really different songs that you would hear normally, and I think they are songs. They're not homages to anything. They're not people just playing progressive music and feeding people what they expect. It's from real songwriters that have put a lot of time into it, from 4 talented people, I must say, and they're really freaking good. You should check it out. And I think you'll find something really interesting in them for many, many years because they're deep songs and they're powerful. And that's all I got to say about that. They're really good.
well, thank you for that. I just want to say one thing because I don't want to leave this one go. Time Has No Place is wonderful. It's broken into 4 parts, and they even name the parts, which are wonderful. And for me, the Air of Ivy Hill is just awesome. But I want to just ask you, because I never did take the time to Google it before this interview. Where's Ivy Hill?
Cheltenham, Pennsylvania.
Cheltenham.
Say it again.
Cheltenham, Pennsylvania. It's a crematorium.
Oh, goodness.
Bam.
Wow. That was like
I live in Cheltenham, but not in the crematorium.
Okay.
That's the one tidbit of information I'll give you about the lyrics.
Well said, Ray. Well said.
You just
Now
yeah.
you got to go back and keep listening. See, Mark, I
Oh,
told
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I think that kind of thing that Ray just said, you're going to find stuff like that in there for all this stuff. That it's way. This is just it's really deep, beautiful, well thought out, pain delivered, weeping, happy, joyous, incredible music. That's the best of all the music that we grew up with that we've talked about today, and hopefully to come too. And these are those songs I'm really happy with. They're written by people that are in their 50s that have learned their craft,
60s.
that have learned their craft, that have learned their
Yeah.
craft very, very well.
Glenn.
Care about it. We are expert chair makers. We are
Okay,
expert.
one more. Emerald Garden. Now that I asked that one, where's the Emerald Garden?
Where do you think it is?
Oh God. No. After that, I'm afraid to say.
I mean,
I
I can say what it
mean,
is, but I don't want to.
sounds
And
like the
also,
garden. It
it's
sounds like the Garden of Eden, but
yeah, those 2 sections. When I'm singing Midnight Ocean, 18,000, Swallow Oil and Blue Green, like that's makes me weep every time. I just find intense meaning in that from my relationship with my friend Ray and Chris, how we wrote that, all that stuff. Emerald Garden. There's snapshots in time that represent a lot of stuff, very deep things to us, and we hope at our best we can connect with people as well. And I don't want to ruin that stuff, especially now in this pre-sale thing, and tell people what these songs are about. I don't think it's fair to them at all.
No, I just meant, is it a place like
Brett doesn't want to share because it is actually also a crematorium. And all of the songs on the album refer
okay.
to crematoriums in the greater Philadelphia area. So
I mean, Glenn,
This album is about yeah.
thank you,
I'm
Here
Glenn.
I'm going
sorry,
down
guys.
the yellow road, and it's beautiful.
No one has
No,
ever
no.
no one has ever written a 16-minute song about various crematoriums in their local area, and we just did. Thank you, Glenn.
I
You
just
guys are great. I'm telling
Well,
you.
spoiler alert. Spoiler alert, you know.
Thank you,
Mark,
man.
I'll leave our listeners with this because this will be something people will want to hear. We love these albums as well.
Yeah.
And I think that says a lot for a band to spend as much time as we did crafting and making these albums. We love them. The statement that they're going to leave for us is one we're incredibly proud of. And like Brett said, I hope people listen for years to come. They're permanent marks of who we are. They're now to infinity. You know, this is us. We wouldn't be putting them out to the world if we weren't ready for the world to listen. I hope the world will take time to listen and to find meaning. And that would be joyous for us because these songs and these albums mean the world to us.
Spend 5 minutes listening to this, and I don't know how you couldn't want to hear this album. I mean, you guys have been, and I really want to thank every one of you. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
You guys contributed to this. I mean, the albums themselves, but also taking the time to do this. I know their eyes are on the big game here, but no, it's past. I don't know, past your dinner probably, but no. Hey, really, thank you for everything, for giving it to me early, giving me a shot at trying to sum all this up, even if it was way off. But no, hey, thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't stop thanking you. And
Thank you, sir.
please,
Yeah.
anyone that's listening to this, or I know I'm not, Howard Stern or anybody big, but if you happen to see the review and you read it and you know, oh, this sounds interesting, please give this a chance. I'm telling you, I don't work for Prog Magazine, but if they don't nominate this in the top three, then get another magazine. I mean, both of these are just unbelievable. They're two of the best albums you're probably going to hear this year. Give it a chance. And once you put these on, it'll take care of itself.
Thanks for that
you, Mark.
vote. I'm glad
Thanks,
you're
Mark. Yeah, stay in touch, Mark. Okay, let us know if you need anything else, my friend.
Definitely. And like I say, when the videos come out, please send those to me. Anyone have anything else they want to add? Questions?
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Thank you for your
They're all from Philadelphia. They want the Eagles to win. Can we get an update on the score?
14-12 Philadelphia.
All right. It's a
Close
tough
one.
game.
Close game.
I didn't want to tell you this, and probably shouldn't. But no, I'm with Philadelphia. But if it does go the other way, Bobby Wagner had such a horrible deal here in Seattle that I hope he, maybe not the team, but I hope he does well for the Commanders.
Awesome.
Just a terrible way they treated him, and I'd like to see him maybe get a sack or two. But
No.
go Eagles!
Yes. No sacks. All right, Mark.
Mark,
Hey,
I'm going to go put the game on.
thank you
All
again.
right, you guys
Thank you.
take care. Thank you.
Ray,
Thank you,
Go
Mark.
Birds.
Pleasure to meet you, man.
All right, yeah, you
Glenn,
too.
Thanks for the
Everybody.
updates.
You got it, my brothers. Take care.
Later.